mentioned earlier some things about gross profit, and those things are interesting. Sometimes the pricing is, especially at the higher end, is a bit of a moving target, and it has to do with your marketing and how you're positioning yourself. I just like to address a little bit how just some concepts for pricing in the higher in that higher market of less customers, but there's no way around it being $1,500 or $3,500 or whatever, because I just think that's something that affects most of the people sitting out here. So
I would say proudly ask for it. Let that be your thing. Don't give it to any artist who expects that they should get it because they're who they are, because even if someone looks down at their feet and sees that they're using your pedal, which is unlikely, or that they'll really go out of their way to talk about it, you still have to make this stuff. You know what I mean? And so I would try and get the maximum money, self-direct when you can, keep your vibe going. I know Daniel's really good at the social media and keeping a cool vibe going out there. When you're starting a business like you started and like I started, there's no room for high volume, low cost because you don't have the money. If you guys were, they always say, how do you make $1 million in the guitar business? Start with 10 million. I mean, and it's kind of funny. You don't really have what it takes to build something that's middle of the price range. If you do, it's probably because, maybe there are people out there that maybe they're not in this group, but if you do, it's probably because you've worked at companies that have done something similar for a long time. You have some money on your side. You've learned the market from somebody else. You know who the suppliers are. You know what pricing looks like. And you scheme this whole production line that has a cost, and that comes true, and then you're able to go find buyers for it. But it's I think selling the higher price thing and lower volume and then creeping your way up to higher volume is the only way. And then if you get to a point, I know Daniel's doing a pedal board now. What do you call that?
The Element.
The Element.
Yeah.
That is like CNC dovetail cut. The wood's a little bit plainer. It's all really nice, but it doesn't carry the same story. And the story is this. People pay for story. They pay for the story. But you can only tell the story so many times. You can only build the story so many times. There's just a very, very limited market for that. And so I think you get to the one point, you feel like you've saturated that, and then you've got to move off of it. I know that that we have seen huge differences just in vendors in pricing of things. But then again, we order a lot of stuff. So, how many S2 preamps do we order in a year?
So much.
Yeah, 125 or 30,000 of them or something like that. So we're a woodworking company, but in reality, we make a lot of electronics, right? And so we can find those vendors that can do something really, really good for us at a really competitive price. If I was making a few of something handmade, I would add fuel to that fire. I would just do everything you can to make it worth more money, not less, I don't see another answer. Because you're right, it costs what it costs.
Yeah, somebody once told me that. It's like, well, just charge what you have to charge to make it worth your while and sell it.
Yeah, and you're like, how does it sound? Well, it's the best sounding thing I've heard. It's just what I need. Okay, well, that's a luxury. It's not a necessity, and that costs money. It didn't get to sound that good easily. It costs money. It sounds good because there's components in there that sound good. there's design that sounds good, and it was hard to make. And if you can find that sound somewhere else for cheaper, be my guest. But the reason I'm making it is because it doesn't exist somewhere else, because those people aren't doing this. It just costs money. It's hard because you realize that it's a super limited customer base for that. And I do think that electric guitar players spend more money on gear than acoustic guitar players, especially when it comes to electronics. Acoustic guitar players don't know anything about amplifying stuff. They get their guitar with their ES2, and then they plug their cord in, and then they hold the other end, and they're like, "Will somebody please take this and do something with it?" I don't really know what to do, but I hope somebody does, And so we're trying to make good electronics for people that just don't know what to do with it. But electric guitar players are like, "Man, I got this cord and that amp, and I changed out these speakers and put this," They're way, way, way into their signal chain, And I always appreciated that. But when you start we made this Neve preamp called the K4. We don't make it anymore, do we? Because it's not compliant anywhere but here, and it was expensive. But you know what? It was a Neve channel repackaged. And what's that? It was a nice preamp. It really was nice. And it cost $800 retail when we sold it through stores, and some people bought it, but nobody really did buy it. And then we started selling it direct for $5 something, and it needed to cost that much money. And eventually we couldn't do it, so I feel your pain on that. But on the other hand, our volumes, what we needed to sell, was higher than what was the Avalon preamp or something. I think we were selling more K4s than Avalon was selling preamps at one time. But to us, it was like, it's hardly enough to bother with, because to us it was not what we really do, making what's that?
Not the right time.
Wasn't the right time. And Trenton's designed a whole thing that is as good as that, and it's modern, and it's compliant, and it fits on a floor. It's a pedal, and it could be really good. But we sort of have to get to where acoustic guitar players care about their sound more. Because mostly they're just holding the other end of that jack, just begging for somebody to take it from them, They'll get like the best guitar you can get with the best pickup, and they'll plug it into a champ amp or something, and it's like, well, it doesn't sound as acoustic as I was hoping. Well, where do you play it? Well, just in my living room. Well, what are you playing an amp for in your living room? Well, I don't know. Well, I think you just have to stay up there, and you just got to do it. Yeah, you really have to do that. Daniel?
When you're going to the next level, expanding, is there a good formula for hiring employees? It's like we have this many orders in the books, I'm going to hire this many people, take this many hours. Like, what's kind of a good, maybe rule of thumb guide for expansion?
We try and look at our expansion as an annual expansion. In the early years, you can expand a little bit more than in the later years, because when it's big, the critical mass gets big enough to where if we wanted to expand by 10% in a year, that's really a lot with what we do, because we have to make these darn things. It's a lot easier to expand something that you don't have to make, that you just buy. Somebody else makes it, and it's their problem. But since we have to make them, we think now if we have 10% annual growth, that's pretty good. There were some years we had 50% annual growth, and that was when we were at $3 and $4 million a year, and we added like 47% one year, and 52% another year, and 38% another year. Those were just kind of the right times when the building we were in could be filled up more. the fixed overhead that we had could be used more. We always make the most money when we're just standing on top of each other and almost working on an upside down trash can just to get stuff out the door. And then we do the same thing that I prevented you from doing. We go get some more space, and then boo, there goes our gross margins. They sink down while we fill it up, and we have to start raising it back up. And so we look at those ratios where we have to really go for it. And when we look at our sales growth potential, now we're at a point where we've got really good market analytics. We have full-time analysts. What do you call those guys?
Smart people.
Analysts.
Smart people do
Yeah.
things that
Yeah, and we have one who's like as smart as that as Andy is with what he does. He's an analyst, and he sees data, and he can mine it and dig it and kind of predict. We call it predictive analytics, and we can figure out what we think could happen. But I would say that you're at a point where a full-time person is more than you need, but it's hard to get a quarter-time person, right? So with us, it's pretty easy now because we can go, well, we're going to add 22 people between here and Tecate a month for the next 3 months. Then we're going to, and even if that doesn't work out, it's not a huge, if we put on 50 people in a year, we almost don't notice it, which is kind of stupid. No, I mean, it's true. I mean, we're thinking of building a factory just to stand alone for baby tailors, just not babies, for GS Minis. Because, like, it's a guitar company itself. It's a 200, probably could be a 400 guitar a day company, department. So we're thinking of just building a factory just for that. And so that would be similar to what you're talking about. Gosh, do we really... Whew. And then what do we do with the space that we're no longer using that we took that out? Is there going to be enough growth there to fill that? Or are we just taking on expense? We think about it really hard. But I think that if you look at it annually rather than weekly, or rather than based on like the latest feeling that you have about the market, or you got like 4 orders in yesterday, and so it seems like it's going great, and then it turns out you go 4 more weeks before you get another order, you know? It's those things you say, all right, I want to double my business this year. When you're small, you probably can. You know, what would it take to double it, and how would I go about doing it? And if you can march it out, if I could say I'm doing... say I did $75,000 last year, and I want to do $150,000 I'm going to do 75 this year, and I want to do 150 in 2016. How's that going to come? Is it going to be at the rate of 150 in January, or is it going to be at the rate of 85 in January and 110 in, in May, and 150 in September, and ending up at 175 at the end of the year, right? And then the average would be 150,000 or something. So the rates. So if you can grow and spiral up, that's what I would do. And you could. I think everyone's a little bit different, but I think if you could say, well, what if I grew 10%? What if every month I just did 10% more than last month? It's kind of like what I said. If I could make $15. Bet I could make 20, which is so much easier to accomplish than going, one of these days there's going to be some money left over for me to have a paycheck. And there's no numbers tied to that, but what you're thinking is $1,000 every week or something like that, and it never happens. So I would be looking at breaking it down. And so that means that, hey, While we're coming here, I really do need to hire some kid after school to sweep up or wrap or something, and then I'll do that for 3 of these increases, and then I'll hire a person full-time, but they're only half busy. But you see what I'm saying? So you kind of have to cope on your way up to something, hire somebody and then cope while you're filling it up. But if you take on too many people right off the bat, and businesses don't just double, they just don't do that. They do it over a period of day in and day out, and they can end up being double, but they don't just double. And so if you realize that right off the bat, don't just double your capacity, because you'll just end up with capacity that you're paying for that you're not using. And that's a good way you have to sort of take care of everything. You've got to take care of not just your payroll, but your materials, your cash flow. And if you can figure out how many times you're turning if you can figure out, like on the back of a napkin, not on some, to me, computers make it complicated. I'm like, if I can think of this, if I can just go, so what you're saying is it costs me, I'll still do that. I still write it down on a couple of lines to be able to really understand it, But if you can say, to yourself, here's my gross sales, here's my growth potential, my real growth potential, here's the money that I'm making, how can I increase that a little bit each month? You'll naturally see those places where you've coped and you've crammed to get through a couple. Then you hire someone, it relieves some of that. And you can look at all of your expenses sort of at the same time too. And that's the only formula I know. The formula is just try and be really smart about it, but if you can meter it out on purpose and realize that it's not going to just double. If you want to double your business, you would have to have a 6% increase a month for 9 months or something, and it would be double. You can figure those little games out on your calculator pretty fast. And then you go, well, gosh, if I only need 6% every month, what would I need to do that? And it's like I go walking sometimes at the end of my street, and there's this old retired gym teacher, and he'll look at me, I'm giving you an A+, he'll say. I always told my students, it's hard by the yard, but a cinch by the inch, and really, if you break it down like that, it's a lot easier, a lot more to attain. And when you think of doubling something, it's really alluring to want to do that, but the fact is it's not going to happen. You'll double by increasing at 5% on increments. That's how you'll double. You're not going to double by doubling.
I just want to quickly say thank you, and also just mention that you remind me a lot of my grandfather.
Oh yeah.
Who he had like an 8th grade education. He grew up on a dairy farm. He built a huge dairy business. But
that's the milkman.
That's where the milkman comes from.
Right on.
It was an homage. His office was just big enough that the door wouldn't hit him when you walked in. And I noticed that your office is small.
Wow.
It's never
Real small. Filled with junk.
Yeah, but the other thing, that anecdote, is that my Uncle Michael, who went to like business school and Ivy League, whatever, to take over the business, figured out like the calculation of an exact, like how much does a gallon of milk cost, like, exactly. And my grandfather was like back of a napkin guy, and they came up with the exact same number.
Sure.
So it gives it a lot of credibility to what you just said. But I, on the other hand, grew up in a completely different generation, and I just wonder, like, how, if you ever have these moments of like crippling self-doubt, where you're just like second guessing everything, and like, how you kind of overcome that. Because I mean, things are going pretty well for me right now, but like you said, like it kind of goes in waves where like 3 weeks will go by and there's not a lot of orders, and I'm like, what do I do? Like, it's too late. I can't go back now. So
yeah. I've never had crippling self-doubt, but I've had fear that would ruin a person pretty easily, where it's just anxiety that it's not going to work out. But I remember when we were first starting out, I mean, it was our first year, and me and Kurt were sitting down planning, and I'm like, how are we going to come up with stuff? And he said, you know what, at Yamaha right now, and Yamaha was a big deal 40 years ago, he goes, there's like 5 guys sitting in a room trying to figure out what their next move is. And are they smarter than us? Or are we as smart as they are? And I think we're as smart as they are. They've got to do the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Everybody, yeah. So a lot of times when I'm having that moment, I always try and imagine what moment somebody else is having. You know? It happens all the time. We're like, how can we get more Dreadnought business? I go, and they're having a meeting at Martin right now. How can they get more, CE business? They're mad that they don't have any of it, and so it's funny that way. But to me, I've always known that that's my future. I'm a guitar maker. I would pay money to be a guitar maker. People go, if you weren't a guitar maker, what would you be? I'd go, well, my second choice would be a poor guitar maker. I would just be a guitar maker. It's really my only choice. It really, really is. Doesn't mean I'm not interested in anything. So I think that overcomes the self-doubt. It's kind of easy to not doubt myself too much now because we've reached this mass.
Yeah, the legacy is secure around here.
The legacy is pretty secure around here. We would have to screw up royally to screw up. But remember, 3%. We don't have to go out of business for it to suck. We can go from 48% to 45 to 44 to 43, and then Trenton would be going, gosh, this just isn't the same company it used to be. Man, I wanted to check into some things, and they're like, no one's spending money. Dave's been around when we didn't spend money, There have been times when we didn't spend money. Don't think that 2008-9 didn't affect us. It affected us. It affected us big time. But we recovered quick because usually when those times happen, we go, whoa, this is our opportunity to gain market share because we know that we're going to do a better job serving our dealers right now than everybody else does. Because when they decide to cut all their expenses and don't put any money into their dealers, that's exactly what we're not going to cut. And we rebounded so fast from that, it was almost gave us whiplash. It was amazing. So, I don't know. I think my main confidence is that I know that I'm a guitar builder. And I have a life sentence. I'm not getting out on parole. That's what I'm going to do, so I might as well just try and make the best of it. And I decided that when I made my first guitar. Like 5 weeks into it. It was just, oh my gosh. That was a scary thought too, because there wasn't such a thing as a guitar maker in the U.S. in 1973. There wasn't such a thing. I had no idea how to do that. I was going to do it, but I knew that I would, so I just started. And then lo and behold, there was a guitar maker. It was a little shop, and I got a job there and an opportunity to buy it. And so I went into it totally, completely blind. And unlike maybe a lot of you folks, I didn't know anything about guitars when I started my company. I just knew what I learned locally. I didn't know what Martins were and Gibsons. I didn't know anything about vintage anything. I didn't know about what's a good one and what's a bad one. I didn't know anything about that. I just knew that I had to be a guitar maker. And so I guess I would say I haven't suffered too much from self-doubt, but I've sure suffered from fear. And I think that's healthy, actually.
So there is a distinction, I guess, between the doubt and the fear. That's called FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's a single line item.
I know that feeling. I I remember once, this is how it was for me in the first 10 years. I remember once, I distinctly remember, I was watching Hawaii Five-0 way back then. Only the older guys here remember the original Hawaii Five-0. And Dano was complaining about being a cop, and he was moaning and groaning and complaining about being a cop and what a sucky job it was. And I said out loud to my TV, well, at least you get paid, you know. So that's the space I was living in. I was yelling at Dano on a Hawaii Five-0 show because he was complaining about his job, right? And I remember driving down the freeway, looking at the people beside me going to work, going, they get paid. These people are all driving and they get paid. I just want to get paid. I just want to get paid. So I had a lot of FUD during those times. But I also knew that I couldn't trade that for not being a guitar maker. I'd go, I got to quit doing this. And then I would think that through and be like, I think I just need to get back to my bench and get to work. Just forget all that nonsense and get back to work.
Bob, how many years did you have this company before you turned a profit?
Well, we were an S corporation, so all the profit rolls through to us. So I'll define the answer. The answer is that we were making what I would say a reasonable living, and there was some money left over to keep the company alive. That's how many years I'm going to tell you. And I'm going to say about 11 years. We moved at the end of our 12th year into a 5,000 square foot building. And that's when we did our first million. Well, we skipped $1 million. I think that was a big year of growth. We went from $1 million to 1.6, and then to 2.5 or something like that. We had a couple of years of huge growth. But it was a good 10 or 12 years.
So you had really nothing to fall back on except going forward.
The only way, what did you say? The only way around it was through it, you know? There wasn't anything else for me to do.
So do people call you lucky?
People that don't know me can call me lucky. I think a lot of people don't even know the story of where I came from, because there are a lot of people that just, well, Taylor Guitars is here, it exists, it always has been. You know, they don't really think about where it came from. A lot of people don't know that I started it. A lot of people think, well, my dad must have started it, you know. Somebody before me must have started it. It's weird where you go from nobody knows who you are to people knowing who you are and that you must have always been there. Like there was never a beginning of a big bang for Taylor Guitars. You know, there was never a creation, and they're blown away when they hear the story. Oh, you're a real guy who really started a business. You're actually a real person, you know? And so people they don't pay attention until it's popular to pay attention, and then they pay attention to what it is now but don't know much about the history. It's just the same as, you know, my friend Zach Brown. Out of all the whole artists that we work with, Zach Brown's the one guy that I would say is a real friend to me. You know, we just sort of hit it off. And he was, you know, he finally did his Chicken Fried song, and he's they play real music, that band. They're a good band. They're here in town this weekend too. And, but I mean, he had 20 years of playing bars before that happened. I mean, working really hard. Maybe not 20 years, but 12 years, 14 years. He's not old enough to have done it for 20. But nobody knows about that part.
Who are some of the people that you're most proud of that are like Taylor artists?
Well, I'm really happy that Neil Young picked up our guitar, bought the guitar, all those years back then. I think I did an introduction to my book telling about that story. That was a big boost. Some of those people that bought guitars in the early years, and by the way, all those people, he bought that guitar from a store in Florida, but all the other people that were the Laurel Canyon, LA crowd from back in the 70s, they all bought those from Fred Wallachy at Westwood Music. Again, dealers sell guitars, right? He's the one who put all those Taylor guitars in the hands of his customers, right? And I didn't have any way or access to sell to them. I was a huge Gordon Lightfoot fan. Here's my artist relation experience. Gordon Lightfoot was playing San Diego State College. I went to meet him, take a guitar. I was so nervous I could throw up. I hate those situations. I hate those situations. I don't like it at all. I don't really want to meet a person backstage. I just don't even want to be there. There's nothing about it I like. I know some people that do what I do, and you can't stop them. They want to be there all day long. They know everybody. I'm just not that way. I spent most of my life, it might be hard to believe, but I spent most of my life trying not to be noticed, And turns out that guy's got stage fright, and so he gets all nervous and sweaty palmed before a show. So he goes in there, he's nervous, I'm nervous. I show him a guitar. Yeah, that's a nice guitar. Okay, thank you, bye. And I take my guitar and I'm like, gosh, I'm glad that's over. And I start walking, and then I'm walking down through the back of that, and then some really cute girl is like, are you with the band? And I'm like, no, and I just kept walking. And then it was like my one and only groupie experience, that could have worked out, but I just walked right by, And then I'm just like, that's the last artist relation thing I'm ever going to do in my life, and it kind of was. and so there's Zach. I think I'm probably most proud, or most pleased. I won't say proud, but pleased, kind of happy, tickled about some of the people from my generation. John Fogerty is a big one for me. Kenny Loggins is cool. There's a lot of newer people. I've known Taylor Swift since she was 12 or 13 or something like that, and she lives in what we call the rare air now. In that book, I talk about the belly up years, and the belly up years, because we have a club up here called the Belly Up, and people play the belly up on their way up, and they play the belly up on their way down, right? And those are the years that I know them. But in here, I really don't know them anymore, But they're, except for Zach, he's up here, and I still text him, and he'll text me back.
Yeah, I sometimes I feel foolish for the sort of emotional attachment I have to the gear we produce. My question for you is, if someone like, say, Yamaha came along and said, we're going to give you, Bob, and all of your employees a big chunk of cash, pick a number where it's just ridiculous. And they said, yeah, but we're going to make these all in China now. And you knew that your legacy was going to be destroyed. Would you do it?
And I've already made that decision. The answer is no, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. And if Yamaha said the exact same thing, but we're going to make them right here in El Cajon using your same people, I would say no, exclamation point, because they'll ruin this business. They'll just ruin it.
So I'm not stupid then?
No, you're not stupid. I don't. They wouldn't do a better job than we do, and our employees that helped us build this business wouldn't fare better. They would fare worse.
Do you give guitars free to artists?
In certain circumstances. Let me see if I can explain. We probably have about 3 or 4 levels. Tim could explain it much better, but he spoke about it this morning. He's like, well, I want an endorsement. Well, we don't do endorsements. We do business. Well, let me put it this way. Taylor Swift was as big as she ever was before we gave her a free guitar. She bought all those guitars. And then one day, her tech called and said, we need a B-rig. B-rig being an exact duplication of all the guitars so they can be setting up in Europe while they're playing here. And there was no way that I'm going to charge her for that. I'm not going to do that. And I'll give Zach Brown guitars all day long. But I can call Zach and go, dude, I need the guitar that you own now for a charity auction. You got it, buddy. He'll put it with his scratches and his stuff and his stickers on it and give it to me, and I'll sell it. I'll go, you have another one coming right away. You know what I mean? So some of these we've got really good. He's not like, well, you can't have that one. If I asked for it, he'd give it to me. He would. And he has. We give tour support. So we loan guitars. This is what I call net never sometimes. But so we sell guitars. We might send 6 guitars to someone who's starting a tour, a band or somebody, and then we go pick 2 that you guys want to use for it, send the others back. We get their credit card number before we do all of this. If they don't send them back, we're going to run that number. We'll tell them. Some people you have to chase down to the corners of the earth. But we have dispassionate people who work for us in that department that do not mind making those phone calls. It's like, you owe us for these guitars, you haven't paid yet. Oh man, okay, well, I can issue a call tag and get them picked up right now. Well, I really do want to buy that one. Okay, well, can I take your credit card right now? Yeah, okay. So it's just a bunch of people out there that on the surface they look irresponsible. Deep down inside, they're irresponsible. But they're also busy, and they're also living a life that's, where they get given stuff a lot. And then there are people that we'll give them a guitar. And it's a judgment call every time. We sell way, 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 way more of them into there than we give away. When George Strait wants a custom guitar, or Alan Jackson wants a guitar with, swordfish inlaid on it, fishing stuff, we charge them for it. Yeah, they play it in front of people, but we don't give it to them. Ryan?
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Like, I'm working with Daniel at Salvage, and as I've gotten to know his business, there's a lot of people out there copy. They look at what we do and they copy us. And as Daniel's like, it's not a big deal, but it infuriates me because I've taken the same type of love towards the company. And I was just wondering if you've ever had that sort of thing happen to you, where you see someone trying to take your ideas, and if not, do you have any advice on that?
Well, as a matter of fact, we're copied up one side and down the other. So we go to the Frankfurt Music Messe, and the first people to land is Ethna, our attorney, who works for us here, our in-house attorney. And she and one other person will walk that floor, and then they'll get the trade show legal police and remove all of the Taylor copies from that trade show floor. We just take them out. But those are things where they're copying our registered trademarks.
Right, so I was going to say.
Right. So it depends on what it is you've trademarked. It's hard for me to trademark my GA shape isn't trademarked, but my pickguard shape is, and my bridge shape is. My peg head right now is trademarked, but it includes the Taylor. So in Europe right now, they won't trademark our peghead because they say if you you can't trademark something like that. This is a person at the trademark office who obviously doesn't know the history of headstock design, that it's European history, and that is the mark. You know, every classical guitar maker's mark is the design of their headstock. So on a big company level, you have to do now what we're learning about now, and we're really working towards it, is what's called debranding. There you go. You have to debrand. Okay? While you guys are all working on branding, I'm working on debranding. So what's debranding? See this right here? What kind of shoe am I wearing? Where does it say Nike? Okay, that's what's called debranding. That's a very powerful mark because it needs no word by it for it to be powerful. So in reality, we need to teach the world that is a Taylor. And then that'll be powerful world around. But as long as it says Taylor, it's not powerful because somebody could copy this shape and say Layler, you know.
But when you were starting, did you have that in mind? Like, were you thinking already as a young guitar builder, like, I'm doing something special? Like, I'm really...
We learned as we went, and luckily people didn't copy our guitars because no one knew them and we weren't that popular. We had time to learn, but we started copywriting every little bit, copywriting and trademarking every bit of trade dress and logo stuff we've been doing it consistently as a project, whether we can afford it or can't afford it. We've chipped away at it for not 40 years, but for 33 years.
And that was solely just based on to protect your own, like, your artistic...
We're going to own our name. Do you know that Martin doesn't own their name in China?
They don't.
You can buy a Martin guitar in China that's not made by Martin, that's made by somebody who registered their name in China. Martin could barely even sell a guitar there because somebody else owns the name. And then they copy the guitars exactly, except the Chinese version. The cool thing about guitars is you can make a look-alike, but it's not the same. We had a customer from Canada the other day, wrote me this big old long story. The story goes something like this. I wanted a guitar, I've been saving for one of your guitars, I wanted a 900, I really couldn't afford it. Gosh, I saw one in Craigslist. Guy was selling it for a great price, said he needed the money. I went down, I bought a 916 CE. That's an expensive guitar. I should have known something was wrong when he only wanted $1,400 for it. It's like a $5,500 guitar, right? And since it was a Craigslist thing, he wanted to meet at Starbucks, and I saw the guitar, and I gave him cash, and I went home, and I started looking at it, and I'm like, this just doesn't seem as nice as the Taylors I've played before. I think maybe I need to take it in and have it adjusted or something. Maybe something's going on with it. Maybe the saddle's loose. And then I'm looking at Craigslist and I see the exact same story again. There's another 9-something for sale. Meet me at Starbucks. It's just like the same ad. I get to looking at it, and this thing is a total, complete fake, copied to the T. And he's like, just wanted to let you know this is going on, and now I couldn't afford the first one, and I wasted all my money on this one. He was lucky because he was the first person who ever did that, and so he said, well, we'd like to buy that guitar from you because we need to go trace it down, and it was our first good opportunity to buy one. That was this last year, and we did, and it's a terrible copy if you know your own work, you know? But it's not a terrible copy for a person who doesn't know your own work. That poor guy didn't know the difference. Even the label inside, everything was a copy. It was like a photograph and then printed and stuck on, you know what I mean? But it was just like, it was all counterfeit and all kind of poorly done, but enough to where someone could buy it. And so we we do a lot of copyright protection as, you have to look at it as consumer protection as much as your own protection, and that's when it's kind of stronger.
Obviously, Salvage, so it's like when you start to
Well, you need to make sure that your name, that Salvage Custom, and your logos and those things are copyrighted. You just, because somebody can just up and copyright your name, then to do it. And then even if they don't actually really own it, you have to fight them to get it. So you want to really do all these things before it's a fight. It's just cheaper to just kind of chip away at these things a little bit at a time. But you can't really patent and enforce what you make, because it's a really nice box that a pedal board folds up in. You could probably, if it's the first one that ever went up, it's too late now because you've made it too long. So the patent law won't let you patent it. But those are things that you could do a utility patent or a design patent. Here's one. 3D printers, printing on the tops of guitars, where people can print, you can print anything on it with ink. Well, there's a guy who patented that. His name's Steve Spurgeon. He patented it some years ago. And now we're negotiating royalties with him because we end up doing these promotional guitars with bands or whatever. And of course his idea was this is like the next Dolby that he created or something, you know what I mean? Like everybody with an expensive guitar is going to want this, and his royalty stream is going to be a huge amount, and you're going to, you can do, and you're like, dude, what you invented was a way to make a cheap guitar cheaper, and something that nobody's going to pay for because they're all going to be promotional giveaways, and nobody's really going to make a serious guitar that has full 4-color printing all over the top, and you're going to have to wait for glam rock to come back before there's a lot of guitars with points on them that someone wants to print a picture of the devil slobbering on the front of it or something like that. You know what I mean? And then it'd be great because all those airbrush guys would be out of business. You just push a button and make another model. But those guitars are also going to be made in China, and they're going to cost $3.99, and the royalty stream isn't going to be more than a few cents because it's not worth it. And you're going to have a lot of people doing it and just trying to bust your patent. But we're not that person. We're not going to try and break somebody's patent. But just because someone has a patent doesn't mean that it's defendable. So if we wanted to just completely ignore him and go to court, we could probably do what he does and disregard his patent and fight him in court and break his patent. Because a patent is not always defendable. They give people patents every day that they shouldn't, right? Buzz Featon's tuning system is all patented, but he patented the wrong thing, and he tried, anyways. It's not defendable.
So I have a proprietary thing that I do with the strings to make it so that I can make round core strings usable and sellable. And it's a design thing, and I haven't found it on any other string that's similarly made that is handmade round core. Is that the kind of thing I could patent? The thing that actually allows me to finish the string and make it whole?
Yeah, but it's very hard to patent it after you've put it on the market.
Yeah, I mean, I've found people who've actually taken my strings apart thinking they're going to do what I've done, and they've ruined it, and they've completely gotten the wrong idea from it. They didn't figure it out. But I know that people are out there trying to and that's how I feel also about like silk wrap, around the tails. It's not anything new that I've done, but no one else does it because it's just hard to do.
It's the same kind of thing as Coke and Pepsi. I don't know if you know, but Pepsi's sued Coke for copying their recipe. Why? Because they wanted in court to get the Coke recipe and Coke just pays the award. What's your damage? Let's pay you. But we're not going to court so that we have to reveal our recipe. So people play these big nasty games with each other. It's a slimy game.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing too. It's like how much of what my process is do I share? I mean, and I think this for like amp builders and pedal makers and stuff too, because there's some.
If you have a process that really sets you apart, don't share it. It's always great to take someone through. We don't have any places here. One of the reasons is because what we do is just too hard to do. If you want to come through here and take all the pictures you want and, and go home and try and do it, rock and roll. You got to make all that stuff we made, It's hard to make, So the thing is just do your processes. It's better in a patent. We only have a few things patented at Taylor Guitars. Only a few things. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, people are, other string companies, especially newer ones that are, spending $100,000, $150,000 on developing machines, so that they can do it for themselves. I have a feeling like the next level is like copying my aesthetics, and a lot of like string people. That's true. Well, I mean, it's like even the string aesthetic itself, those kinds of things. It's like, that's a little scary because it's like, everybody says, well, how is this guy's string set apart? Well, you see it. I got a silk band on the tail, and it shovels up really nicely on these offsets and tail pieces. And that's the one thing that I do know that at least you can see when you see my string. It's those kinds of things are kind of a little bit scary because once they figure out how to make a silk wrap,
Well,
then
like you said, like it's more expensive. I can relate to this too. Make a box. It's like some people look at it and be like, "You're freaking crazy." It takes so much time to do that. It's like, well, nobody else is gonna do it. Copy me because it's too stupid. And I slowly figure out how to make it profitable, a little bit at a time. But it's the same thing. Like, just do the stupid thing.
Well, doesn't everything fit on a scale? So let's go to one end of the scale. I'm an auto detailer. I wash cars. I do a really good job. I've developed a clientele. I get $50 a car to come out and wash your car. I'm making money. Everything's fine. I take on some clients. I hire a person. They work for me for 2 years. They decide they want to own a company. They already own a truck. They buy a tank, and they already know my customers, right? And so that's like as bad as it can be for a guy. So that guy is like, I've just got to work by myself for the rest of my life because everybody I hire just steals half my customers, and does it for a little bit cheaper. And then at the other end of the spectrum might be us, where we'll share anything you want to see because I know you can't, I know you won't do it. Whether you can or whether you can't, you're not gonna because it's just too hard.
You know, the car washing one.
What's that?
Even the car washing one, you provide a customer service that the employee of yours can't provide. There's always something that you can do that your company can provide that nobody else is going to do.
You're exactly right. It doesn't keep that guy from doing that and stealing customers, and some are happy and some will come back to you. So you guys all fit in the middle of there somewhere, right? Of these sort of two extremes. Yeah, it's easier to copy your aesthetics. People find something that's cool. The thing that irks my partner's nerves the most is, if you look at this guitar, it isn't a Gibson. It's not a Martin. It really is. That's our bridge. That's our pickguard. These are our inlays. This is our shape. That's our peg head. That's our logo. We went through the trouble to design our own thing. And it is really, really hard to take a pencil and put it on paper and start drawing and it not be a Stratocaster, It's really hard. And when it's not a Stratocaster, it's a Paul, So it's really hard to do that. It's really hard. So when you do something that becomes iconic itself and then people copy it, it kind of irks your nerves. And so you go around and you stop people from using those all the time, every day. We do it all day long. The things that we registered on the hill that we're willing to die for. All the other things, I think you just have to be the person that has the market share. Sure. And I've always said here that we can't have market share unless we make the guitars. And that's one of we can have mind share, but we can't have market share unless we make guitars. It takes guitars to have market share. So the whole tenure, the whole history of Taylor Guitars is, guess what? We're making more guitars next year. Sometimes it'd be like, where are we going to sell them? I don't know. That's all y'all's problem up there in that office. That's not my problem, but we're making more guitars because we're not going to get market share without making the guitars.
One thing I was wondering about, and that I hoped you would speak a little about, is your experience with your partners, where you had a partner where it was just like so amazing, and then there was another one that didn't
It was an idiot?
work out.
Didn't work out.
And
Need to help you out.
yeah, I guess if you could just
So partners.
yes, speak about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. The best thing that ever happened to me in guitar building was my partner. And I didn't really do anything to get it or deserve it. You know, he's just, because I spent an equal amount of time on both of them, which was very little time. But I think that I got really, really fortunate. Now my partner I have, Kurt, for a lot of years, he felt like, well, you know, we're successful because of all the good decisions. You know, we're in control of our fate, and there's really no luck involved. And I'm like, there is too luck involved. And he's like, well, no, there's not. I don't believe in luck. I go, well, what about the fact that you and I are partners? That's a total stroke of luck. Think about it. He's like, well, yeah, I guess you're right. You know what I mean? Because that was a total accident. I go, and that's the key to our success. I'll tell you right now, yeah, you're talking to the man, but you're only talking to half of the man, because I couldn't have built this company that you see today by myself. Couldn't have done it. I just couldn't have done it.
What's his talents different from yours to make that?
He doesn't build guitars.
Right.
His talent is finance, marketing, sales. That's what he became good at. He was a kid too, but that's what he was interested in. So he's a smart guy. I mean, we were 19 years old. We had a little bit of money. We spent half of it. He took that money out and he paid an attorney a bunch of money to. On our first day of business, we had a buy-sell agreement, a partnership agreement. We're 19 years old and have partnership agreements. Who does that? Most people don't have one of those until it's too late, until it's not working, until the whole thing is going to fold. And we used that 8 years later when we had to dissolve our partnership, and that it was all right there. You know, didn't matter what Steve felt he was going to do with his whiplash lawyer against us. It was all right there. He had already agreed to what's going to happen if we reach this point, right? And so Kurt's the one who makes sure that our trademarks have been chipped away at. He's the one who has the relationships with the bank and makes sure that our company is financially ethical. And, you know, he's the one who controls that all the time, and he's the one who demands his profit, you know. He's like, you're not selling enough high-end guitars. I want my money, you know, that kind of, you know, this is not right. He doesn't just let it go where it goes. And I don't do that in the factory either. People are like, oh, I'd like to add another day of production so that we have a buffer zone, you know, in case someone's sick. I'm like, yeah, do you see this body? It's still alive. And you get to do it when I'm dead, because we're not doing it as long as I'm alive, because it's not going to give you anything. And so him and I both have our things that we do, and we train that culture into the company. But his talent is all on that end. So while he's taking care of that, he's the one who really has, all the way up until more recently, he's the one has been the man behind all of the marketing. He's the one who decided that we're not going to hang guitars on celebrities and do ads with them, or that we're not going to talk about that we make the best guitars made from the finest materials played by the most famous people, you know, that we're not going to do that. He's the one who put up ads that just had a picture of a blue sky and a tree that said, of all the trees in the forest, only a few get chosen to play beautiful music. Come to think of it, that's the way it goes with people too. Taylor guitars, you know. I mean, those were the ads that we hit the scene with 30 years ago. And it changed the industry. It was a different kind of advertising. We stuck out. It caused people to think introspectively, you know. It wasn't just like guitar, guitar. It was more like so. So we've been able to win over the wives and the friends, not just the guitar player. Our brand is welcome in the home.
What area do you think you get consistently the best return on investment with? Is it machinery or labor or marketing or?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
But when you were
So I don't really think of return on investment. I never think of return on investment. Ever, 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 ever. I never think of that.
so
I think of there's my future. That's where I'm going. These are the things I need to get there. My choo-choo train is short, and I'm not going to get any one of those things ahead of the other stuff. It all is a return on investment, all of it. And I'm going to try and keep a really tight pack. So if they go, yeah, we need to do it. So our marketing is a percentage of our budget. It's a budget. That's what we spend. We don't spend any more on that. We don't go, hey, there's an opportunity to do something in Rolling Stone. No, we don't have, I'm sorry. If you can figure out a way to get us in your magazine without us breaking our budget. And by the way, our budget's spoken for on the first day of the year. So don't talk to us for the whole next 12 months. So there's a little bit of leeway in there, but we have to rob Peter to pay Paul sometimes. But I don't look at it that way. It's amazing. I bought my first Fadal because I knew that that's where my future was. And then the Martin guys go, well, I had about 3 or 4 by then, and so they sent a task force out here, spent a whole week. I'm like, let's draw your bridge. So I drew it on CAD. We made their parts. I'm like, take this home so you can show your board of directors. Yeah, we got to give them the ROI on that. How did you justify your ROI? I'm like, what? Look out there. There's machines. They make guitars. I guess that's the justification. Do you want one? I want one. I just need to justify it. Okay, well, it sucks to be you. I'm sorry. It's that way, but... So I just don't look at it that way. I sort of have just developed the ability to keep it all in check. And I just like, we're not spending that on that now. No, we're not doing that because that's not going to make a difference. There's things that could make a bigger difference than that. And so with tooling, we have engineers and all this stuff over there now. I mean, really bright people. But teaching them to be clever, that's a whole nother thing. And so I spend most of my time going, you guys have to be clever. You can't just be smart.
Sounds like you alluded to it earlier about 2008. I was just curious, what were some of the things that you guys were proactive with, and what were some of the things that you just took action on in order?
So 2009, we came into 2009 with guitars sold, but it quickly all just melted away by February. We knew that it was not going to be good. We decided to jump on it and really, really take action right then, right now, and and put enough to it for it to make a difference, not play around. So the first thing we did is we cut our production. We cut the production, and we used the California Work Share program. So that we were able to put everybody who works here in the building guitar area. We kept our shipping open. We kept our sales open. We're not going to turn our sales down. And we're going to ship guitars every single day we possibly could. Everyone else, we went to a 4-day week, 3 weeks a month.
Wow.
And during those other days, nobody got laid off. And they all kept their benefits. But during the days they didn't work, they got to draw unemployment. We did our personnel department, we beefed it up, and we did all the paperwork for everybody. Normally, every single employee would have to deal with the employment department, and they'd have to do all this stuff. We're like, we'll fill out your paperwork, we'll get your money. It's our service that we're going to do to you employees. You're going to go home, go to the beach. You get a half a day of pay for going to the beach. A lot of people were like, oh, really, actually, it's not so bad, And then we kept that up, and then we still did our road shows. We still did our TGUs, our Taylor Guitar University. We spent all that money, even though it hurt. We spent it. Pretty soon, our dealers were like, well, our business is off 15%, but we're still selling 85%, and we're going to make sure You guys are, they just go, you guys are the only people who are helping us sell guitars. For crying in a bucket, we're going to sell more, if we're going to sell a guitar, it's going to be a Taylor. And so by November of that year, we were back up to working full time again. Everybody was back to work. And by, I guess it was March or April of the next year, we handed out a bonus to help make up for all of that missed money from the year before, because we made money, and so we just we're back. So we gave everybody that was on that work share program a bonus check. And it didn't recover all the money, but it recovered a nice chunk of it, and the gesture, that's another way people stay here for those years, because we always think that when it's bad, it's really easy to get well, it's bad, we need everybody to chip in. But it also needs to be, when it's good, we share it. You know, it's just, you got to share it when it's good. And so we did. And I think those things that we do, I think people appreciate it. I get a head nod from Trenton back there. And we just try and be honest and forthright, right, and ethical about those things, and go, yeah. So you go, hey, everybody, we made it through this together, you know. That could be the end of it in November, but it was actually pretty sweet in May or whenever it was, when we go, you know what, it's been great, there's enough money here, there's checks in all of your boxes. And thank you for last year, sorry that sucked, here's some money to make up for it.